Hi guys, welcome back to another video, and today we will be once again talking about now Invest 97L, which the National Hurricane Center is monitoring in the Atlantic. It currently has a high 70% chance of development within the next 7 days and a low 30% chance of development now within the next 2 days. They now are saying that a well-defined tropical wave is producing a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms over Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, the southeastern Bahamas, and the adjacent waters of the southwestern Atlantic and northeastern Caribbean Sea. Development of the system should be slow to occur during the next day or so, while it moves west-northwestward over portions of the Greater Antilles. However, environmental conditions are forecast to be more conducive for development after the wave passes the Greater Antilles, and a tropical depression is likely to form this weekend or early next week over the eastern Gulf of Mexico near the Florida Peninsula. Interests across the Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, and Florida should continue to monitor the progress of the system. Now, the general area where the National Hurricane Center is forecasting the system to develop in is basically over somewhere near or over the central to western parts of Cuba, and likely really in the eastern Gulf of Mexico to the west of Florida. So it really now looks like it will be going into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, which is not a good thing because the eastern Gulf of Mexico is the warmest part of the whole basin, especially sea surface temperature wise. Now let's take a look at what Invest 97L is looking like right now. As of now, you can clearly see it has a lot of convection blowing up all around its supposed center. That's likely somewhere over here. Most of the convection, though, is blowing up around it and to the north and east of it. So it's getting a lot better looking now. However, the general model track guidance is in, fairly good agreement. It has spread, but it generally all forecasts the system to go into the eastern Gulf of Mexico and then more than likely make landfall somewhere along the panhandle of Florida and then move towards the north and east and go along the southeast coast and maybe reemerge into the southwest Atlantic off the east coast of the United States. So we'll see about that, but the track of the system could be actually quite interesting for sure. Now, this is the GEFS, the GFS Ensemble Model Track Guidance, just showing what their ensemble is thinking. And you can see it generally brings it into the very eastern Gulf of Mexico, and then making landfall in like the more Big Bend area of Florida, just to kind of like a bit to the north of the Tampa area, and then crossing Florida, and then once again showing that it'll reemerge into the Atlantic Ocean off the east coast and then move up to the north and northwest along the east coast, and then maybe I would see maybe more along the east coast and up towards the mid-Atlantic and New England. We'll see about that for sure. This is the Canadian Ensemble Model Track Guidance. It's much more all over the place, not really a great thing to look at because it's just so blah with its presentation. Now the intensity guidance for this system is interesting. Really all the models show it get into tropical storm intensity. A couple models get into hurricane intensity. One model brings it well into hurricane intensity, just below major hurricane intensity. All of that is possible, certainly likely that it at least becomes a tropical storm. If not, maybe at the very least right now it will more or less likely become a minimal hurricane, because again before we even look at where the models generally show, there's an individual general global models individually show the system going. Let's just show you guys what the eastern Gulf of Mexico's temperatures are looking like right now. So the system right now is generally in this area or so, with its convection blowing up all around it in this area. Now, the sea surface temperatures it's heading towards the eastern Gulf of Mexico particularly. It's basically all at least 30 degrees Celsius or warmer, which is mid to upper 80s to like 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and you can see off of the coast, right off the Tampa coast, is 31, 32 degrees Celsius. That's like some of the warmest waters really that it could possibly record. So it is heading into a very, very favorable environment for intensification, possibly rapid intensification, if it also really encounters minimal shear and dry air and dust. So again, we'll have to really watch that closely. To kind of update you guys on what the neutral to La Nina is looking like. Now it's kind of going up a little bit. Now it's at a negative 0.472 degrees Celsius. It is going up a little bit, but it is now like the closest it's ever been to getting near that La Nina territory. So, I mean, really at this point, it'll probably more than likely the trend is that it's just generally been cooling off considerably. So I mean that trend will likely continue with right now probably a very, very short term little bit of warming, but it will likely start to cool back down a lot in the coming days, I would think. So now looking at the forecast models, the general forecast models, we'll take a look at the GFS American model first. Let's just look at that. Let's go to the eastern U.S. because this will really give us a good overall look at the system. So the system is kind of just off the screen down here to the bottom of your screen there. Move this forward in time, and we get this towards this is now as we get into Saturday. We get into Sunday, and there's the system. The GFS, again, kind of really is very much in line and pretty much in the middle with where its overall ensemble forecast track is showing the system going and making landfall along the west coast of Florida, just to the north of Tampa, near the Big Bend area. Then it continues and crosses Florida into the Atlantic Ocean just off the east coast, and then continues to really intensify along the North Carolina and Carolina coastline, and then it eventually kind of stalls out there and then eventually is brought out to sea from there. So the GFS isn't really showing any possible impacts for the Mid-Atlantic or Northeast, but definitely for obviously Florida and then the general Southeast most likely, and even the Atlantic Southeast coast up through North Carolina. So that is what the GFS is showing. Now let's look at the European model. As of now, the 6Z run is in. Let me try and get to, pivotal weather up to maybe show you guys what the European model is showing off of there, because I know that the European model, the 12Z run for the European model is definitely in at this point for that area. So let's see. Let's go to Southwest Atlantic. Let's do... Man, it's really annoying. I guess we'll just do the overall U.S. That's fine. All right, so bring this down, and there's here's Florida. The system's down here. Florida in the southeast is there. We'll bring this forward in time. Bring this out, and you can see the... Let's see, what is it doing? The European model is showing a much weaker system coming up, kind of similar to the GFS track-wise, showing it moving into the very eastern Gulf of Mexico, and then kind of trying to strengthen a little bit as it gets towards the Florida coast, but really doesn't strengthen much, but still brings a lot of rain and flooding potential for Florida and the Georgia, South Carolina coastline. And then as it gets towards, sorry about that, it gets off the Florida coast and into the Southwest Atlantic, off the Southeast coast, it really starts to strengthen. Gets out into the 990s, but then gets back into the 1,000 millibar range as we get towards next Saturday. And this is far out. This is by next weekend. But then it shows it just stalling generally off the southeast coast and then moving back into the southeast. So that part of the track is very questionable. We'll see what happens with that. It's not really... doesn't really show a great look of what will happen. Let's just see what these... let's see what the 60 run of the Euro shows here. Can we... Hello? Okay. I don't know what my computer's doing. It's really annoying. The European model shows the system moving up into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, kind of like the 12Z run, the most updated run. It shows it as a much more just very unorganized system. So the European model is not really doing anything crazy with it. Canadian model, 12Z run. Move this forward in time. Let's actually, where am I? We're going to see Western Atlantic. Let's just do that. There we go. You can see the Canadian model also is probably the weakest of the three main models, at least as it goes through the eastern Gulf of Mexico and into Florida. Brings it into through Florida and into the southeast, then brings it off the southeast coast and into the Atlantic, and then brings it out to sea after it gets off the North Carolina coast and goes out to sea in the Atlantic. So as of right now, what's probably basically set in stone is definitely impacts to Florida, impacts to the southeast, especially just the general southeast of Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. Sorry about that. Maybe Mississippi as well, with some outer rain bands and some rainfall from that. But especially Florida, the Georgia, the Carolinas, definitely seeing more impactful weather from the system. And I would say right now, the general intensity for it, definitely going to be a tropical storm. Definitely going to become our next named storm of the hurricane season, which is Debbie, the D-named storm. And, I mean, a hurricane is not out of the question for sure, especially with how warm the waters are in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. It's the warmest water in the entire Atlantic Basin. So as long as the system doesn't encounter any major wind shear, dry air, it will definitely take advantage of those prime conditions, and especially the warm waters, and we could definitely see it rapidly intensify at that with those types of conditions. So we'll really have to see. The intensity is definitely not set in stone with how prime the Gulf of Mexico is right now. And I mean, it is forecast to get into a much more favorable environment with the fact that it is forecast to become our next tropical system as it gets towards the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So now let's just look over at the overall hurricane season so far. The 2024 Atlantic hurricane season has started pretty strong up to this point. I mean, we've only had 3 named storms, but one of them obviously was Hurricane Beryl, which became our first major hurricane, our record earliest Category 5 hurricane. The second recorded Category 5 hurricane in the month of July, the other being Hurricane Emily in 2005, as well as being the record strongest June hurricane, peaking out as a Category 4 in the month of June before it eventually reached its actual peak of a Category 5 in the early parts of July. So the total ACE amount for this season up to this point is 36.1 units, basically all due to obviously Hurricane Beryl with how long-lasting and strong it was. Only 1 unit was due to both Alberto and Chris up to this point. Debbie, as I said, is the next name on the list, the D-name storm, and we'll likely be getting that in the coming days as we head into the end of this weekend or early next week. And we'll be tracking that storm all of next week and into the next weekend, the following week. And we'll see what kind of impacts, how strong it gets, and especially because of how strong it gets, what the more maybe heightened impacts it will bring to Florida and the southeast especially. And we'll see if any confidence does grow in any other parts of the East Coast or the U.S. being impacted beyond just Florida and the southeast as we get further into next week and we have a much more solidified system. So I'll keep you guys up to date on that, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative, helpful. Comment down below, how strong do you think this system will get? What states do you think it will most likely impact other than Florida and the southeast? Do you think it will end up impacting parts of the Mid-Atlantic or maybe even the northeast New England? Or do you think it will impact the southeast and then just be brought out to sea after that point? So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that down in the comments section. Like the video, subscribe for future content like this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.